Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review, and it's actually a review from one of my favorite houses of all time, Amouage. And I love doing Amouage reviews because it's a house that just has so much emotion for me. They're one of the niche houses that really got me into perfume. It really kicked off this addiction that I have to perfume, if you will. And so this is a fragrance that I've had a full bottle for a long time. I've worn it. I've had samples before this bottle arrived, used all of those samples up, and so I really feel like I know this fragrance like the back of my hand. This is from the house of Amouage, as I said, and this is called Opus 5. And this is actually the old library collection packaging. They kind of open up like a book, if you will, in a library, and inside sits the old style library collection bottles, which basically came with a stand that said library collection. The cap had the Amouage symbol on the top. The tester caps that you'll get will not have that little touch on top. And so yes, I actually like these old style packagings. And so this is created by Jacques Cavalier in 2011. So first, I do have to say, we are all the way to Opus 5 on the channel, and I've reviewed 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the reason I was able to do it was actually thanks to Allie. So thank you, Allie, for sending me decants and samples of the first 4 opuses so we could actually do these reviews in order. There is an Amouage playlist on the channel, so you can go to the Amouage playlist and find the videos and watch them if you would like to watch them in order. But I will tell you that the simplest way to begin this review by talking about Opus 5 is that Opus 5, if you're going in order, okay, so if you start with 1 and just smell in order, Opus 5 is the softest, hands down the softest, and actually one of the softer, more gentler Amouages, which is interesting because when you look at the note listing, there is some things in here that might really make you think, wow, this is going to be a challenging or animalic fragrance. It's not to me, not at all. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the review, but this is sort of a Orris Iris powder bomb, if you will, woody powder bomb. Now, a couple things that we have to get off of our chest, because you know I cannot talk about Amouage without talking about the Fishman and Mr. Reynolds Salman, the creative director of Amouage as it currently stands right now. He did some interesting things, which I've talked about on the channel previously. I'm not going to, you know, go into everything that I feel, at least not on, maybe I'll do that in the live stream that I'm going to be doing later today. But this is a line that Christopher Chong created, and the whole point was to have a unisex line, because Amouage originally had masculine bottles that looked like that, and they had feminine bottles that looked like that. And so the Opus line, the library collection, was supposed to be sort of the unisex line, right? So he actually gave them no names. They did not have names originally. And so there was just Opus 1, Opus 2, Opus 3. It was very androgynous feeling, right? Men could wear them and women could wear these. And whenever the Fishman came along, he decided to add names to some of these for the new Opus lines that he created, but also he went back and added names to a couple of these. And I'm not really sure why he did that, although if you go to the Amouage website, the ones with names are prominently featured in a sort of sample set. When you go to sample the Opus line, the ones that have been giving names are sort of pushed forward. You really have to dig to find the previous Opuses. So I don't know what that means for the future of them, but I can tell you that it worries me. It makes me think that maybe there will be some discontinuations. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know that only the ones that have names now have gone into the new bottles. So this is actually one of the ones that has made it into the new packaging, which looks like the standard Amouage packaging. He standardized it, of course. Anytime you standardize the packaging and economies of scale, you save on cost and all that stuff. So the new Opus bottles basically look like this. They look like this, and they have the name, and of course this one will say Woods Symphony. So that's the name that he went back and gave to Opus 5, is Woods Symphony. And so I am a little torn because I don't like the fact that now he gave it a name. I just like the fact that it was the way Christopher Chong originally did it. But on the other side of the coin, I think that the name actually is a good name for this fragrance, Woods Symphony. And to me, the key word there is symphony, because this fragrance is sort of, just imagine these instruments playing in a symphony, all in harmony. Everything is very harmonic in this fragrance. It's a very good way to describe the way that the fragrance smells. It's a very harmonic fragrances, and it feels like everything is in its place, and every note never overpowers any of the other. So in the beginning, I said that this is a soft amouage, and actually, that's not true. People think that if it means soft, that you're not going to be able to smell it for a long time. I actually sprayed this on my hand 12 hours ago. It's 6:16 p.m. I sprayed it when I got to work at 7 o'clock, so a little under 12 hours ago. And I can still smell this spray, clear as day. I mean, this thing does last a long time, but it's more of a personal, it's a gentler scent, I would say. And so what ends up happening, how it opens up, when you first spray Amouage Opus 5 Wood Symphony, you're going to get hit with this beautiful blast of iris. If you are an iris lover, this is a must sniff. I'm not saying it's a must buy anymore, because some people got offended. How could you say that's a must buy? No one has to own anything. You know how it is on the internet. But I will say this is a must sniff, a must sample if you're a lover of iris or orris in any form. And Amouage actually says that it's orris absolute in the top and orris concrete in the heart. And orris concrete is actually one of the most expensive ingredients in perfumery, if they're using very high quality orris concrete, because of the time that it actually takes. You can't put a fast forward button on orris concrete. It takes 2 to 3 years to create, period. And so it's an expensive material because it's a lengthy material to create. And I will tell you that if you are an iris or an orris lover, that this does not give off the Dior Homme sort of makeup, cosmetic-y, lipstick-y vibe to me. What it really feels like is it's very white and angelic and very powdery. So it's slightly chalky. Imagine like white chalk, right? So my daughter sometimes loves to go color chalk on the sidewalk. And you know, sometimes when you like color really hard with chalk, it builds up that sort of dustiness. Imagine this very dusty, chalky, sort of soft and slightly powdery, but very beautiful, very, very beautiful opening to me. You can tell the ingredients are extremely high quality. Instantly, along with that iris, you're going to get this very soft and mellow, very relaxing wood note. And when that wood note seems to appear, sometimes the iris tends to sort of, not necessarily play peekaboo, but it shows different facets of itself to you. So what you'll end up getting is sometimes the iris will turn more floral. Sometimes it'll feel like you'll get a little bit of a green facet, where it almost smells like there's just a touch of galbanum in here. There isn't, and I think that's just the iris, a very high quality iris showing different facets of itself. But mostly, you get that powdery, you know, I've heard high quality iris described by people as, imagine smelling like a newborn baby's head, right? It really gives off that angelic, powdery, soft, slightly chalky feel, but dusty chalky to me in this particular release. And then you get that very soft wood note, which they have a note listed in the base of dry woods, which I don't know what that is. I would guess this is probably some sort of a mixture of woody materials per se. And we'll talk about some of those different woody materials, but none of them smell like offensive amber woods. If you know what's happened since this fragrance has been released 12 years ago, you know, the industry has gone to this heavy amber woods where everything seems to be just ripping the inside of your nostrils out. If those type of fragrances offend you and you like sort of the vintage style perfumes where you didn't smell amber woods and stuff like that, and you like the high uses of iris in a fragrance, I would definitely implore you to give this fragrance a sniff. So what ends up happening as the hours tick by is that soft, woody, mellow, woody note that comes through. And this fragrance is almost the definition of androgynous to me. Like when I say it's completely unisex, I think this would smell amazing on a woman, and I think it would smell, I actually wore this to work today. I had absolutely no problems wearing this to work. I never thought it was too feminine at all. But what ends up happening is that very mellow, woody note, which maybe if you're a guy, you wish was a little bit more pronounced in the opening. it does start to become a little more pronounced. It never goes off of a light boil. Okay, very low heat, that woody note. It never goes to a full-on, the burner on that woody note never gets turned up to 10 for me, but it does begin to slowly get turned up. And what ends up happening is that woody note tends to feel slightly spicier as the fragrance comes through. You'll notice there's no spices in here. There's rum in the top, which we'll talk about, orris absolute in the top, and then in the heart there's rose, jasmine, and orris concrete. In the base, there's oud, civet, and dried wood. So you notice there's no spices. But what ends up happening is the woody note, as it begins to slowly get turned up a little bit off of low heat. Like I said, it never really gets off of a low boil. But as the heat starts to get turned up on that woody note, you will begin to notice a little bit of a spicy element start to come through. And I think that's coming from the woody note. But it's really hard to say because that iris note just really takes over. It really is the star of the show. If you're a lover of iris, I'm telling you, this is a beautiful one. It's interesting though, because if you look at the note listing, you're going to notice that rum note, and the rum note probably jumps out to a lot of people. In fact, there may be some folks that sample this because they want a boozy scent, and I will tell you right off of the bat, this is not a boozy scent at all to me. In fact, the rum note is sort of not necessarily non-existent because I do get facets of that rum note. So it's almost like a cop trying to pick up the slightest smell of alcohol in someone's breath that they pulled over. Like the cop may think he smells it, but he's not sure, that kind of thing. It's almost like, yes, do you get a rum note? Not necessarily a full-on, I never get a full-on boozy rum note, ever, at all. What I do get is maybe like ancillary pieces of the rum. So, when I think about rum, what comes to mind when I smell the rum note in Opus 5 is, do you know how those Malibu bottles that you can buy from the liquor store for under 20 bucks, or used to be under 20 bucks, who knows how much they are now. It's been a while since I bought Malibu. But imagine those white Malibu bottles, that white rum that is usually very sweet, is why I mentioned Malibu. I know there's other rums that don't come across as sweet, and the higher class rums, they may not have that artificial sweetness of something like a Malibu, right? But it's definitely there. It feels like you're picking up the sweeter aspects of the rum note without actually getting the booziness, if that makes sense. And so the rum just adds a little bit of sweetness, but very well done, very very classy sweetness, and also slightly modern. I always find that these boozy notes, when added to a composition, makes it feel slightly modern. There's a touch of modernity to it. And I think the thing about Opus 5 that really jumps out to people instantly when they first smell this is, a lot of times when you're smelling an Amouage, you're almost expecting something, right? You're expecting this certain type of fragrance. Like, for example, this is just staring at me, so I'm just going to grab it. Interlude Man, right? The Blue Beast. I'm going to review this. This is going to be a Hall of Fame Amouage review on my channel one of these days, but I mean, the resins, the smoke, that strange oregano note, all of the weird things in Interlude Man that many people have come to love, including myself, but that sort of just jarring fragrance style. Same thing with something like Mitzman, or there's so many that you could grab from Amouage that it just always seems like when you want something that's challenging and doesn't follow trends, right? Amouage is sort of one of those houses that never seems to disappoint. There's always something weird and exotic in their fragrances. Not with Opus 5. Opus 5, I think, is the exact opposite of daring and sharp. It's mellow and smooth and blended to within an inch of its life. And I think many folks, when they smell this, I think unless you're an iris lover and that iris just jumps out and grabs you right away, I think a lot of people almost shrug. They just kind of go, it's nice, but there's so many other Amouages that maybe they will go to first because they're so attention grabbing. Some of these fragrances from Amouage that I love, and I still have to do reviews on my all-time favorites, but they just grab you. Jubilation 25 for men, or Jubilation for women. you know, there's so many I could discuss. Diamant with that peony note, and I mean, the list goes on and on and on, right, of Amouage fragrances that just grab you. And well, maybe Dia is a bad example because it is kind of smooth, but Beach Hut Man with that intense greenery, or there's so many. Sunshine Man with that boozy lavender thing, which I absolutely love. And this one is the opposite of that. This is just so unbelievably smooth and slightly mellow, but the quality is there, and you can really feel the quality when you wear this. And I know I want to go back to something, because I know I said that this doesn't smell cosmetic-y, right? It doesn't have that lipstick vibe that people describe in Dior Homme Intense, for example, right? But one thing, even though it doesn't have that lipstick vibe, it may still have a cosmetic feel to it, because what comes to mind is, imagine like in the olden days when women would powder their nose, right? That's an idea of how the fragrance feels when you wear it. I'm imagining an I Love Lucy episode where Ricky has Lucy and Ethel constantly go back to the bathroom to powder their nose to get them out of off the table for whatever reason. He wanted them gone. I forget exactly what happened in that episode, but they go over and over again to powder their nose. And that cosmetic feel of sort of powder, maybe even blush, but I don't know enough about makeup to you know, make that assessment. But definitely I'm imagining vintage old style, you know, women powdering their nose. There's a little bit of that. So maybe like if you go back to that chalk metaphor that I mentioned earlier, imagine sort of the chalk, and just imagine it like the chalkiness like building up on your hand, right? So you almost get like a film, and then you blow it, and the chalk goes up into the air. And I've used this analogy before. Was it LeBron James or Michael Jordan? I forget. He would take that chalk and throw it up in the air, you know, before the games. Just imagine that sort of powdery explosion. The nose powder, there is definitely this chalky, powdery, dusty, you know, you dust your hands off and it goes into the air and just disperses, right? But it doesn't just instantly fall to the ground. It just sort of floats up in the air, right? There is something slightly airy about the powdery note as well, even though they consider this a oriental style fragrance because of some of the other notes we're going to discuss in a little bit. It is a lighter take on an oriental. Let's put it that way. That's the way that I perceive it when I wear it. And what ends up happening as the fragrance continues to dry is the sweetness from the rum, which remains, even though that boozy note just never truly makes itself known. If you're going for full-on booze, you have to go with Roja's Creation E, or if you wanted to go with an Amouage, you could go with Overture Man. There's many other fragrances where that boozy aspect is much more prominent, let's say. In here, it's just the sweetness of the rum, but what it ends up doing is it ends up working as this natural sweetener for the florals, because there's two florals in the heart. There is rose, which dominates to my nose, and jasmine. So you're going to get this sort of slightly sweetened rosy note. Have you ever seen how flowers sometimes, when they're stuck in a water that is colored, like if you color the water that the flower actually is growing in, like put it in a jar, put some water, put some blue food coloring, the petals of some flowers will actually turn blue or green or whatever color food coloring you put in there. I just imagine this rose like growing out of a glass of Malibu rum, and just the rose coming out smelling slightly boozy, slightly sweetened from the rum. That's kind of the way it smells on my skin, with that beautiful orris note. And it does last. I will say this. There are some orris notes in perfumery that they just do not last. This one absolutely lasts into the dry down. And, you know, so the rose growing out of that rum, that rum gives it almost like an electric shock to the flower. It's like everything is so smooth and mellow, but it just adds like a neon sign to the flower a little bit. You know, that rosiness, just that oriental rose style is just given a little bit of a neon sign. Look at me, but everything is so well blended. and so smooth and beautiful. Like I said, I wore this to work today. I could smell it all day, did not have to reapply. I reapplied before the video because I wanted a fresh spray, but I didn't have to. I mean, I could literally still smell the spray from 12 hours ago. It is that potent, although it doesn't have the disgusting amberwood image that many of the modern amberwood fragrances have gotten in Fragcom, right? And so the jasmine's beautiful as well. I don't want to take away from the jasmine, but I think the rose really dominates the florals to me. And like I said, don't let those florals stop you from trying it if you're a guy. I think it's completely unisex. I had no problem wearing this to work at all today. And I just want to mention a couple notes in the base before we talk about the inspiration for the scent. So there's 2 notes in the base that sort of really, I think, scare people off or make people think, wow, this is going to be a fragrance that goes in this direction, but it really doesn't, because Jacques Cavalier, like I said, blended this beautifully. And those 2 notes in the base are oud and civet, okay? So when you think about those 2 notes, you might look at that and say, wow, this is going to be an ultra animalic from the civet, or maybe the oud is going to be, you know, dark and heavy and smoky. It's not. It's none of those things. Just like the rum note in the top, I wouldn't say it's a phantom note because you will get bits and pieces of it, but they are just so well blended and I think used so sparingly that there's nothing in here that would put you off. This is actually, I would say this is a good starter amouage. So if you're someone who is not used to smelling the crazier amouages, actually this one's a silver oud. If that's too intense for you, or interlude man or stuff like that, if you're just someone who is not used to the heavier, more challenging amouages and you want like a good intro to the brand, I know a lot of people say Reflection Man, but I actually think that this may be an even better intro, this Wood Symphony. Because it's just so beautifully blended and it gives you little hints, little bits and pieces, but it's a good first step, I think, amouage, if you ask me. And the civet note, just like a couple things to say about the civet note. Civet is kind of one of those notes that scares some people that don't like animalic fragrances. I'm the exact opposite. I want more animalics and more oud and more musks and all that stuff, right? More ambergris. I have the Russian Atom curse, where we always want more. And I have a very high tolerance for animalics, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But I really have to search. I mean, I have to put my nose in my hand, and I have to really inhale deep to try to get some of that civet. It's extremely, I do think it's there, but it's just used so sparingly that none of the pissy aspects of civet come forward. None of those dirty, pissy aspects come forward to me. And as far as the oud goes, the oud here is, you know, the oud. The oud note here is used sort of in the same style as you might imagine if you just picture in your mind, or go watch my reviews on some of the fresher oud fragrances that I've discussed on the channel. One would be something like, for example, I talked about Cashmere by Arabian Oud. That is a very floral take on oud. And you get a lot of the florals in here with that oud note in the base, right? And the other one is Aquilaria Blossom by Arise Ladore. That's the better of the 2 I just discussed. And if you want kind of a reference example of what a fresher oud fragrance should smell like, I think that's a great, and especially since I don't think that's sold as well, I don't think it's as popular, so I think you can buy bottles on the secondary market for a very good price, or one of those discovery atomizers or something like that. So that's sort of the breakdown of the scent. Now I want to talk about something very interesting, because Christopher Chong in 2011, when he created this scent, his inspiration that he wanted to use for creating Opus 5, which I never would have, no way in a million years would I ever have guessed this, but the inspiration for Opus 5 is the World Wide Web, the internet. That's the inspiration for Opus 5. And I can't say I can make any sense of how any of this responds to the internet, but apparently, according to a very interesting Fragrantica article, which I would urge you to check out, Christopher Chong explained that he did not set simple and clear goals for perfumer Jacques Cavalier in the perfume. So one should not wait for the smell of electricity or plastic gadgets or anything like that. That as a fan of social media, Christopher Chong wanted to convey in the fragrance the fast speed of information spreading on the internet. Like forest fires fanned by strong winds. Yes, this is what usually happens: post, repost, comments, development of comments, so forth and so on. So I don't know how to make sense of that, to be honest with you. That symbolism is, how does this scream the internet? I have no idea. Maybe the fact that the cloud based, right? And there's like this cloud of powdery iris coming at you. Maybe the very thin underlying notes that you really have to search for, representing the symbol of knowledge that's out there. I mean, if you think about it, on our phone, or even just logging onto a computer, think of the unbelievable amount of information we have access to. But you have to look a lot of times, right? There's so much BS on the internet. And so you really have to kind of search. So maybe the fact that some of these notes are sort of woven into the fabric of the fragrance so carefully, you really have to look for the rum, you really have to look for the civet and that oud note. I don't know what else to say about about the internet, and the symbolism aside. Christopher Chong and Jacques Cavalier quickly responded to user requests and created a light and long-lasting woody, powdery fragrance that meets the popular request of perfume site regulars. That's what's written on the a youthful oud. That's what's written in the Fragrantica article. And so the internet thing, that's it. If anyone has any idea of how this is supposed to relate to the internet, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm sure people can get extremely out there with that. But all in all, I will tell you that this is a fragrance that goes in a different direction than what you would expect from most Amouages. But I think if you're a fan of sort of vintage perfumery, if you like big iris fragrances, if you're a fan of orris butter, orris concrete, whatever you want to call it, the iris note, this is one definitely to try. And I think it gets overlooked a lot. And the other thing I have to mention, because reformulations are always an issue, and I have not smelled the new bottle of Opus 5. So I've never smelled the one that actually is in this particular bottle, okay? I've only smelled the vintage version. So I have no clue if the new one is as good as this one or if it has been reformulated. But what I was going to say is the good news is that you can find this bottle still at a pretty respectable price. There are bottles, the vintage bottles, floating around for a fair price, because this one, like I said, I think a lot of people just kind of, they smelled it and they went, it's nice, but they never really, I don't think, gave it enough time. They didn't look deep enough on the internet, if you want. I have no clue how to connect those dots with this supposed to be like the bringing the internet into it, the World Wide Web. But I love Christopher Chong's work. It's a pleasure. I'm so happy to have a vintage bottle of this. You can see I put a little bit of a dent in it. I've used multiple decants of this, so this fragrance is one that happy to have in the collection. I hope you guys have enjoyed the review. If you have any experience with the new bottles of Opus 5, or if you have smelled the fragrance, if you're familiar with it, I'd love to know your thoughts. Leave it in the comments. Thank you to everyone for tuning in to the Sultan Pasha live stream that happened this Sunday. We regularly had 100 people watching, which is, for me, like, you know, Rich Mitch mentioned that that's like getting up to stage fright areas, and that may be true, although I'm blessed to have every single person watching, so I very much appreciate everyone tuning in. That interview was awesome. Those interviews with the perfumers, for me, are some of the best stuff I've ever put on the channel. I have an entire playlist dedicated to interviews, so you can go check that out. And I am going to try to hop on a live stream today to celebrate 6,000 subscribers. We're not going to be able to keep doing this because now the thousands are coming faster and faster. Like, it just feels like we just celebrated 5,000 a couple months ago. And we did. It was a couple months ago. Now we're at 6. So pretty soon I'm gonna have to stop doing the 1,000 every single time. We're gonna have to start shooting for bigger milestones, 10,000, 15, 20, so forth and so on. But thank you to everyone who has subscribed and basically got us to this point. I love doing these videos for you guys. Love the interaction. So do leave a comment. Let me know what you think of Opus 5. Thanks for watching. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.